Now, the Buckeye Extra podcast with Rob Oller, Bill Rabinowitz, and Joey Kaufman from the Columbus Dispatch.
Hello, Buckeye fans. This is Joey Kaufman. I'm joined by Bill Rabinowitz and Rob Oller. Ohio State is on to the quarterfinals. The Buckeyes play Oregon on New Year's Day in the Rose Bowl after a dismantling of Tennessee on Saturday night. And I think it took about 13 games for us to see Ohio State at its full potential, and probably changes the outlook of them moving forward. We'll get into the game, but that was, I imagine, for everyone listening to this podcast who's an Ohio State fan, a pretty cathartic beatdown of the Volunteers.
Good word, Joey. That's a great word. Great word. I say thanks. That's how I described it in the analysis I wrote. But yeah, it was, because, look, this could have gone one of two ways. This could have been the way it went, which was everyone's, seashells and balloons, or it could be pitchforks. I mean, if they had lost that game to Tennessee at home, second straight loss as a favorite, not as big a favorite as against Michigan, but still, it would have been devastating. I mean, it would have been awful. And for them to not just win, but to win the way that they did, dominating on both sides of the ball for 3/4 of the game. The second quarter, they kind of, took their foot off the gas pedal, as Jim Knowles put it. But the game was, after the first drive by each team in the third quarter, the game was over. It was 21-10 at halftime. Ohio State stopped them and then scored 28-10, and you knew it was over. So they needed this. I mean, they needed to win, obviously, but they needed it almost as much for their psyche.
One of the biggest things, in sort of retrospect, looking at this, is that we all looked at each other. It's 21-0, right?
Right.
And they're just cruising. They look great. They got the fast start. It goes to 21-10, and it's like, whoa. I'm not sure the stadium got super nervous, but there was, we had to stop writing.
Right.
Like, oh no, okay, let's see what happens here. And the fact that they came out, and Ryan Day talked about it after the game, and came out those first 4 or 5 minutes and just dominated and kind of made a statement there, and then went on to win easily. I think that says a lot too about this team, that they didn't kind of fold, they didn't become conservative, they kind of kept the gas on high, and that was a big moment, I think.
Yeah, Robo, we talked about this as well, but and Bill, you touched on that from the start. This was probably the most important win of the Ryan Day era. I think he's had better wins from just who you beat, because this was a flawed Tennessee team in some ways, and Dylan Sampson, their star running back, didn't play. That's not to take anything away, but you look at the way Ohio State dismantled Clemson in that 2020 playoff semifinal. I still think that's probably the best win on Ryan Day's resume, maybe Michigan in 2019. But you just have two different doors you can open for Ohio State. You open the door of the win, and as emphatically as they marched through that doorway and broke it down, they could win a national championship now. If it goes the other way, Billy said all bets are off. So in terms of the scenarios that you have at play on Saturday night, was huge, just the directions of the way the program could change going forward.
Absolutely. I think I said that it wasn't the best win. It wasn't Ryan Day's best win, but it was his most important win, because it wasn't a loss, just as you said, Joey. And a lot of things get into that. We don't need to get into the Ryan Day job security thing too much, but if they lose that game, it's not only torches and pitchforks on high alert for Ryan Day, but he's going to get blamed. And this came from somebody inside of Ohio State. He's going to get blamed for the whole volunteer fans showing up in the shoe. I mean, he's going to take the blame for all of it. And that is a really bad look, to lose to Tennessee and to have Tennessee fans, 30% of the stadium Tennessee fans. So this was very important. And he was smiling after the game. I know there were some big smiles on that face. When Joey and I saw him, he looked pretty serious and all business. But I saw photos where he was lighting up. It was a huge win for Ryan Day, as much as it was for the football team.
If you could imagine, you could imagine them playing Rocky Top endlessly as the Buckeye fans depart the stadium. Can you imagine? And did you notice that the Ohio State band played Rocky Top, kind of a Bronx cheer kind of thing, and they were doing the SEC chant derisively. Look, this was a huge win in many ways. The biggest, of course, is just that they advanced and they won. They looked like the team finally that we thought they would be all year. And that's something they hadn't been. They looked like that team for glimpses or more in games, but never as thoroughly as they did. Penn State, they fell behind 10-0, right? Indiana, it was 7-7 till late in the first half until the punt muff, and then Caleb Downs with the punt return early in the third quarter. Michigan State, obviously Nebraska, against nobody. Northwestern even. Northwestern jumps ahead, and you're thinking, oh man, is this going to be craziness? So we've waited for this team to just kind of say, we are a national championship caliber team, and we're going to put our foot on your throat and not let up. And that, except for the second quarter, is basically what they did. And even the second quarter, look, if they don't have that roughing the passer penalty on Kenyatta Jackson, which probably shouldn't have been called. The guy had the ball in his hand when he got slammed. They don't score the field goal. So they had one long touchdown drive, 16-play drive. Okay, it happens. But that was it.
The Ryan Day haters aren't going to like hearing this, Bill, but I'm not sure it's 100% accurate. But losing to Michigan.
Don't say it. Don't say it. Don't say blessing in disguise. Don't say silver lining.
Might have been the best thing that happened for this team.
He goes there.
For those who care more about national championships and winning titles than they do the Michigan game.
I can see it coming.
I'm just saying there's something to it. I'm not sure if, as I said, when you get shamed and embarrassed, how do you respond? Now, they could have responded horribly, and that would have been it. But they didn't. So it's like there was something, and I'm not saying just the players. I think, digging into this just a little bit, I think the shame and embarrassment was on the coaching staff.
Oh, much more than the players.
And we talked to, at least I asked a couple questions after the Tennessee game, and that heated meeting between players and coaches, cleared the air.
Yep.
It kind of gave them a new path forward. It was necessary accountability. And I think that, it got ugly in a sense, and they responded to it. So that doesn't happen if they beat Michigan. Now, maybe their psyche is, is great if they do beat Michigan, and that's not a problem. But it wasn't from the standpoint of just where your head is and where your emotions are. Losing to Michigan may be that blessing in disguise. There, I said.
He went there.
I won't go that far, but
smart guy.
You do look at Day's tenure. He has responded to losses well, I think, for the most part. The way they have made changes after losses, you look at the way they tweak some stuff on defense after losing to Oregon, have tightened things up on that side of the ball in the second half of the season. You look at Georgia from 2 years ago. You look at the changes they made offensively this week against Tennessee to get the ball in the hands of their playmakers out of the gate and make it much more of a perimeter game than it certainly was against Michigan. I think for the most part, his tenure, they have not wasted those losses. They've used them as opportunities to make adjustments pretty well.
I think what happened, I see the point you're making, Rob. I do, and I wouldn't go that far because I think the game is too important to say that there's a silver lining or that it's the blessing in disguise. I just think
let me just jump in. What I'm saying is there's nothing you can do about it now.
No.
That's all I'm saying.
I get what you're saying, and what I would agree with is that when you hit that point, when it knocked out two of their goals, right? They had 3 goals, and that knocked out 2 of them, beating Michigan and winning the Big Ten. So when you're left with nothing except the big goal left, and you're one of 12 teams in it, and you got to play an extra game, And you've got a tough team in Tennessee. I mean, that's all the opponents they could have played this past weekend. Tennessee's the one that scared you the most by far, right? You weren't afraid of Indiana, certainly. You weren't afraid of SMU or Clemson. So you had the one team you thought, okay, when the bracket was down, okay, they had a real one. They didn't get a pass into the quarterfinals. They got a real one. And so when you have to face that and know you got to face potentially Oregon again, it clarifies the mind. Okay, if we're going to do this, what do we have to do to have, what was the Friday Night Lights thing? Clear eyes, full heart.
Clear eyes, hearts can't lose. It's.
I think you almost needed to say, okay, let's strip everything down. Let's get everything out there. All the gripes, all the complaints, all the criticism, all the whatever. Let's have a meeting. Let's bare our souls. And let's move on. And I think that's what they did. I mean, you were kind of onto this before most people, Rob, about, whatever happened. And we don't know exactly what happened, other than they've all said there was a heated meeting where people did not hold back. And the only thing we can imagine is that the players basically said to the offensive coaches, what the hell was that against Michigan? Why did you put us in a bind and basically cost us the game? We're better than Michigan. Our defense played well enough to beat Michigan. I don't think they're like attacking Jaden Fielding for missing 2 field goals. What are you going to do? I mean, the kid feels bad enough. But the coaching staff putting them, as they've admitted, not in the best position to let their players succeed, that's the cardinal sin of coaching. And I think the players, when they talked about holding the coaches available or accountable, I think that was the biggest part of the meeting. Again, we don't know what was said. But I can't imagine the coaches blame the players. I think it was more the coaches went after the players went after the coaches and said, "Look, we got Jeremiah Smith, we got Emeka Egbuka, we got all these guys. Give us the ball. Don't all that stuff." That's what
absolutely. And I think that Michigan's in Ryan Day's head, and I wrote this. I think the way to get them out of your head is to play to your strengths, to play to your identity and who you are. Ryan Day has to. Now, next year's going to be tough no matter what, but to beat Michigan, and we need to look forward here a little bit, but to beat Michigan, you can't get it into we're going to out-tough them. We're going to get into a boxing match with them. I don't think, you do have to be tough, but you've got to just go, you've got to play fast, you've got to play loose, you've got to just let it fly, and that's who Ryan Day is. And I think, I've written in the past, well, they need to be tougher. They need to run the ball. Well, I think I'm changing my tune on that after what I've seen, is that they just have to be what they are that makes them most successful.
I think this team, and this is the case, I think, for a lot of Ryan Day's teams, but they run the ball better when they set it up with the pass.
Absolutely.
They came out throwing against Tennessee. That opening drive, 4 of the first 5 plays were passes. They threw to TreVeyon Henderson on a wheel route, targeted Emeka Egbuka and Jeremiah Smith. They went long. I mean, the first touchdown was a deep ball to Jeremiah Smith, that 37-yarder. The second drive of the game, they get Emeka Egbuka down the seam. 5 of the first 10 plays they ran against Tennessee were passes thrown to Emeka and Jeremiah. They ran the ball better later on in the game because I think that stressed the Tennessee secondary and they couldn't tee off in the same way. I mean, that I think is the formula for them clearly going forward. They did a lot more motion stuff as well at the line of scrimmage. So to me, that needs to be the calling card for them if they're going to make a run here.
Absolutely, and you guys know this. What happens is these coaches get into that windowless room and they outthink themselves. Yeah. They kind of lose grasp of reality a little bit and just the practical. Who are we? What are we? And I think they finally grasped that. They kind of like the light bulb went off after Michigan. And you know what? We just got to be who we are here, and let's do it. And Bill said, during the Tennessee game, it looks like they're finally having fun. Or at least enjoying themselves.
They don't have there's the obvious pressure to winning a playoff game, but you don't have the rivalry stakes. And I think what's important about they're not trying to win the game in a certain style, which I think feeds into the psychological aspect of the Michigan loss and why they look so much different against Tennessee, because you don't have the same pressure where we're trying to be physical, we're trying to be tough, we're trying to run between the tackles. you get out of, you don't have that pressure of the stylistic performance. I mean, it's not gymnastics. You don't have to win a certain way. You just need to win on the scoreboard. And they have the athletes to do that outside.
It was almost like they had an effort attitude, right? Effort.
Okay.
Yeah, I can say, I can't, we'll try to be classy here. I'm not going to say the word, but it was almost like the attitude was, okay, we have plenty to lose. Obviously, but we also are going to play like we've got nothing to lose. This is it. We're going to leave it all out there. Effort. And, we're going to throw to Jeremiah Smith a lot. We're going to throw to Emeka a lot. We're going to get Travion in space a lot. And they also did a nice job, I think, of masking the offensive line issues. They did a really good job. And when I watched their game again last night, the line played better than I thought in the run game. There was one play, Quinshon Judkins' 10-yard run where Luke Montgomery was playing left guard, just absolutely pancaked the guy, just mauled him. Tegra had a nice block on one run. Look, it's still a shaky line. That's still, if they don't win the national championship, odds are that's the reason that they don't, because they are missing two of their three best players. And I give credit to Josh Fryer for gutting it out, because he clearly hurt his ankle, got it taped. I watched a couple plays him specifically on Saturday night, and he could barely move. He just was doing it on guts. And hopefully the 10 days will help him, because they got really no good options at right tackle, right?
Well, I wondered to that point, because he was limping down at the goal line on the second drive where he was not moving well, and you don't really have a great secondary option other than you could maybe move Tegra Shabola out to right tackle and then
that's probably what you do. Maybe, but Tegra hasn't played there all year.
It's Patrick, but they don't have really very. Zen Mahalski was available, even though
he is right. He was in uniform.
Yeah,
he's in the portal, but he was in uniform.
So they
all right. Enough with this facelift plastic surgery on the offense. Let's talk about the MVP, the side of the ball that's never needed plastic surgery because it's been beautiful most of the season, and that's the defense.
Well, I mean, the thing is with this defense in this matchup against Tennessee is Tennessee is a limited offense, and especially not having Dylan Sampson available for a huge chunk of the game made them very one-dimensional, made them pass the ball, I think, more than they would have liked to. They put so much on the plate of Nico. He ended up scrambling a bunch of times in between his throws, scrambles, and design runs. He was doing something with the ball 51 out of their 70 plays in the game. That is too much for a redshirt freshman quarterback to do on the road. That played in Ohio State's hands, really let them tee off on him. Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau, I think, probably had their best games as a combined pass rushing unit together that I've seen between them at Ohio State. That was not a good matchup for Tennessee. They needed to really not have to play from behind, and the fast start by Ohio State fed into that. And I think certainly Ohio State's defense came up in a big way because of that.
We'll talk about the Oregon game in another podcast, in depth. But Oregon obviously is a very different challenge. Dylan Gabriel's an experienced quarterback. I think we saw Saturday night the difference between a fifth-year senior and a redshirt freshman at quarterback. And I thought Nico played pretty well, honestly. I mean, he didn't have a lot of help around him. The receivers didn't get open very often, but he didn't look like a deer in the headlights, other than having to run for his life. He made some really nice scrambles. It seemed like most of their offense was him just kind of scrambling, playing backyard football. But Dylan Gabriel's a different beast. I mean, he's experienced. We know he picked apart Ohio State the first time. You have to be aware of the run, the way that he can maneuver in the pocket and buy time for himself. We're going to see the re-engineered Ohio State defense and whether the re-engineering took and whether it works against Oregon, part two. But to talk about Saturday's performance, I mean, I can almost think about every player on that defense and think of a big play he made. I think early in the game when Caleb Downs, it was a run or maybe it was a scramble, and it looked like Nico might be able to get a first down. It ended up being like a 3-yard gain because Caleb Downs chased him down so quickly. Lathan Ransom had a huge hit, and then he had the big tackle for a 5-yard loss on Tennessee's first possession of the third quarter, which that was essentially the game. When they didn't score and make it a one-possession game in the third quarter, you kind of knew, especially after Ohio State scored, it was over. So Lathan Ransom played well. Tyreek Williams played well. I thought Sonny Styles and Cody Simon certainly. I mean, they were all good. Cody Simon had 9 tackles, 12 tackles, something like that. I mean, he had a
great pass breakup at one point as well, where he he held up and jumped to the passing lane and batted the ball down.
I think Cody Simon is what's it, most improved player? If I had to,
he or Stunning Styles as a linebacker. Yeah, I would agree with that.
I mean, just say that you mentioned Caleb Downs. I think it's a good sign because he did make that play, but I didn't hear much from him the rest of the game. I think it's a good sign for this defense when you don't hear a lot of Caleb Downs. It means everybody's doing their job. He's kind of like that safety net guy that just, well, at least Caleb Downs played a good game when it was, I thought, the best defensive performance. Now, Tennessee's offensive line isn't great. But still, they just, they played with their, what do they say? They're with their
hair on fire. Hair on fire.
Yeah, well, half of them don't have hair anymore. Everybody shaves their head.
Did Denzel Burke even have a ball thrown on him? I don't remember Denzel Burke even having a ball thrown at him. I mean,
that'll change against Oregon.
That's what I was going to say. We know what's going to happen against Oregon.
Yeah, I think the true test for the defense will be Oregon. I think going into this Tennessee game, 17 points for Tennessee felt about right for what the defense could do. The question was, could Ohio State beat them, win 35-17, end up being 42-17, or could they lose 17-14?
Right.
And that was the real, I think, concern for Ohio State, was because Tennessee's defense was the strength, built a lot like Michigan on the defensive line, and could this end up being a Michigan-ish game where Ohio State could just not protect Will Howard? Everybody talks about the offensive line having trouble against Michigan for its inability to get a push at the line of scrimmage and create holes for Travion and Quinshon Judkins, but they also did not protect Will Howard very well in that game, and that came despite Michigan and Wink Martindale not dialing up all that much pressure. And you look at Tennessee, which had one of the best havoc rates in the country and could really get after quarterbacks. Will Howard was not sacked once, rarely under pressure, had time to throw. I mean, the worst he was hit was on that face mask penalty on the first drive. And after that, I mean, he had a pretty clean jersey for the most part.
Joey, here's the deal. I don't know if you have this stat right in front of you. You usually do. How many chunk plays for Tennessee did they have? Did they have a lot or not?
It was only one play of 20 yards or more until the fourth quarter.
Okay, so here's my takeaway.
Including garbage time.
All right, here's my takeaway of the three keys against Tennessee. And to me, they're the three keys to win a national title. It's like the recipe. One, the play calling. The coaching was better. They let it fly. That has to continue, and it happened. And number two, I know we've talked about the O-line doing a decent job. I think they did a great job when you look at protection. Will Howard did not get sacked. I mean, none of us would have said that probably because the strength of Tennessee was their D-line and the weakness of that. We talked about that ad nauseum. That was the match.
James Pierce Jr. is second in the SEC in total pressures this year.
Yeah. So what you're going to have against Oregon, and if you move on, the play calling and coaching has to be what it was against Tennessee. The offensive line has to be what it was against Tennessee, and defensively, that pressure they got on the quarterback and just everybody doing their job, playing as they did. This is my takeaway. Those three things, coaching, offensive line, and then defensive pressure, if they played like against anybody the way they did against Tennessee, they can win it all. I'm not sure I would put them favored again. Well, I will favor them over Oregon because I picked them to beat Oregon. Now, some of us didn't.
Well, here let's just
let's not revisit. You only get one shot. You can't wait.
Just so you know, we had to submit before the game.
Doesn't matter.
Our Oregon Ohio State picks if Ohio State were to beat Tennessee. So we didn't know that this Ohio State team finally would show up. So Joey and I was being homers. Being homers. I was
very prescient, knowing that the Michigan loss and embarrassment would key them on.
It was the best thing that ever happened, right, Robo? The best thing
that ever happened. Best thing that ever happened. Anyhow, those are my three. I don't know if you guys agree that those three elements are like the key.
Oh yeah, I completely agree. I've said forever that the best pass defense is a pass rush. I mean, that's just the way I feel about it. You give any competent quarterback time, he'll pick you apart. It's impossible to cover a good receiver for very long. And Oregon has really good receivers, as we know. So the key is to fluster Gabriel. I was talking with Joey and I talked this morning. I said one of the keys for Ohio State might be not so much getting sacking Gabriel, but getting in his passing lanes. The advantage that Nico had over Gabriel, he's about 6 inches taller. Gabriel's short. And if you can get in the passing lanes and deflect passes at the line of scrimmage, Jack Sawyer obviously is really good at that. Tyler Williams has done that. JT has done that. I mean, they can do that. That may be where you kind of neutralize some of his, effectiveness. I mean, they're going to make plays. I mean, they're not going to hold Oregon to 17 points. If they do, I'll be very surprised. But yes, they're going. Oregon's going to get some big plays. Ohio State's going to get some big plays. But I think Ohio State can create havoc more than Oregon can, at least, But again, Oregon didn't have Jordan Burch the first time.
I would say they get Jordan Burch back.
Right. So, look, this should be a great game. And this should be a great game. But I'll throw another, element into to add to your three, kicking game.
Yeah,
now,
that's fair.
Jaden Fielding, that was a long field goal. I don't even know why they tried it, but you didn't have a lot of options. So, okay, fine. You let the kid, maybe if he makes it, then it's a huge confidence boost.
You know why you tried it? You know why you tried it? Because if he did what he did against Tennessee and it was horrible, not to try it again.
Yeah, maybe. Okay, here's your chance, kid.
The other thing, too, is you don't want to get anybody hurt. I guess to have sort of a Hail Mary and everybody dogpiles on somebody in the end zone, something weird could happen.
Yeah. I mean,
I think what it says is if you've got a Georgia situation where you need a 50-yarder to win it, you're going to go. I don't care if it's 4th and 15. You might go for it. You might have a better shot. I think you have a better shot getting it to Jeremiah Smith or Emeka Ibuka or anybody that, at 4th and 6, 4th and 8 than you do to try to make a 50, 55-yarder.
I mean, everyone talks about the pass interference call on Jeremiah Smith in the first game, and it, pushed him back. If they had gotten the ball, I think it would have been like a 45-yard field goal. I think that's about what it would have been.
I'm sure he makes it.
That's my next sentence. Everyone said, okay, Jeremiah Smith, they win the game. Well, not necessarily. He's got to make the kick.
He at least has made a 46-yarder at Penn State.
Yeah, but he missed a 34 and a 38-yarder. Now, the weather's going to be better.
I'm saying it's different than 56 yards.
Oh, no. I don't blame him for not making the 56-yarder. Oh. But it wasn't close. It wasn't.
No, but they have not had a field goal kicker in years who could kick over 50 yards.
You know what they would do for Mike Nugent?
That was more, I think, if he makes that, then, okay, it's not, I kind of expected, we expected him to miss it.
Oh, yeah. And it's a 56-yarder. I don't blame him.
And I think the coaches are out there like, okay, let's see if he can do this. He can't do it. So we know the next time we're not going to do that. Right.
Yeah. But I think that if they get in a
situation. You're right, though, Bill. I think you're right. I think add kicking to those three elements of coaching, O-line, defensive pressure, kicking. Or special teams. Maybe just throw that.
Yeah. But, I think if it's a situation like they had last time when they've got a game-winning drive, they're not going to feel comfortable until they get probably like the 20. All right. I mean, and even then you're going, I think they're going to try to score a touchdown. I don't think they're going to assume anything in the kicking unless it's a chip shot. He's been good on extra points, but even I watched the first extra point last night and he kicked that one low. Could have gotten blocked. So, yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, we always talk about Ryan Day being aggressive. And I think sometimes we limit it to 4th and 2, 4th and 3, 4th and 1. I think the aggression is the whole mindset. It's the entire game. It's just not in specific situations where it's, they're on their own 40 and it's 4th and 1. I think it's what you just said. We're just going to keep the pedal to the metal here. And the whole game, it's not just 4th down situations when he talks about we want to be aggressive. I think it's a mindset and play calling.
Do you think it was an aggressive mindset to intentionally lose to Michigan so you could only have to play Oregon twice this year rather than 3 times?
It's genius. I'd call it.
That's another benefit to losing the game, right? And they made adjustments and they only had to work it twice.
I expect God to slide us all.
Hey, I'm not kidding, Callie. I've had some emails that suggested that. I've had some conspiracy theory emails of, did they lose to Michigan on purpose? I'm like, oh my goodness.
They must flock to you. I don't get that kind
I
of
don't get that stuff.
feedback. They just
Well,
must
I get that
go to you.
stuff. Yeah.
You must have a safe harbor in conspiracy land, and when it hits your inbox.
Yeah.
But it is a not you basically swapped out an Oregon rematch in the Big Ten title game for a first round game against Tennessee.
That's a great point.
In terms of the just the accumulation on your body, you were 13 games going into the quarterfinals.
Well, and a lot of psychological
I will
pain.
say we haven't touched on that. How hard it's going to be to play. What, 16 games they would have?
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
But basically everybody's going
to and here's the thing: it would be 16 games, and if they beat Oregon, they would play Texas potentially in Dallas in the Cotton Bowl or in the Metroplex, North Texas, and then if the winner of
right
on the other side of the bracket would be Georgia and Atlanta.
Well, maybe Ohio State fans get hold of that promo code. Can dip into Mercedes-Benz in Atlanta and AT&T Jerry World and get 30% of that crowd.
I'll tell you what, though. Here's my pick. I think Notre Dame's going to beat Georgia.
I agree as well.
I think Notre Dame's going to beat
Georgia. I got Georgia, and I got Georgia, Tennessee. Oh, not Tennessee, Texas. So I'm showing my hand here that I've got Texas beating Ohio State in the semis. And that
you had to do that again before we knew, before the playoff.
Yeah. Right. And so I had to stick with it. That was actually my preseason. So I just think that's a long way off at this point.
Here's the other side of this too, is if they do go on and win the national title, there's no super team in college football this year where they have to dethrone a 2019 LSU type team or even 2020 Alabama. But the road to get there, I think this will be as well earned a national title as anybody has had in the history of the sport. And that includes whoever wins this, just because the amount of top 10 teams and quality teams you will have to beat in a matter of weeks is as high as it's been. It's not just winning some bowl game on January 1st and having a bunch of sports writers across the country put you on the top of their ballots. And you have to earn it on the field week in and week out against some really good teams.
Ohio State, if they win it all, will probably have played 7 top 10 teams. 7 out of the 16 will have been against top 10 teams. Oregon twice, Indiana, Penn State, Tennessee, presumably Texas.
3 in the playoffs.
Right, 3 in the playoff. 4 in the playoff. Probably 4.
3 more to go.
3 in the regular season and 4 in the playoff. I mean, I don't know that anybody, I haven't looked it up, obviously, has ever won a national championship having defeated 7 top 10 teams. Or played 7 top 10 teams.
That is impressive. I don't have it right in front of me. I should know this off the top of my head, but who's Penn State have?
Penn State has Boise.
Boise? They have Boise, and if they beat Boise, then it would be what, Georgia, Notre Dame?
Georgia, winner of Georgia, Notre Dame.
Telling you what, I know that we've seen Penn State. We're not super impressed by Penn State, but you could get a Penn State Ohio State matchup, right?
Well, sure.
I mean, I'm just saying that would not shock me.
You also could have Ohio State Notre Dame, and Lou Holtz could be the guy with the trophy at the trophy presentation to the winner.
Notre Dame's very good. I don't think they have a great passing game or deep passing game, but they're very solid. Very good run team. Very good.
They run the ball well. They have a quarterback who can run.
If you're Ohio State, I don't think you want Notre Dame. It just, I'm not sure you've won the last 2. I'm just saying, sort of like Ohio State history kind of starts factoring into this for me. I'm writing this thing again on, Ohio State 7 times in their history have played a team multiple times in the same season. Most of those were early, like in the first few years of the program in the 1890s. Kenyon, Wittenberg,
you talking about Penn State? Are you talking about this as applied to Penn State or Notre Dame?
I'm just thinking Notre Dame.
Last.
Well, right, but I know, but it's just this whole idea of, I'm thinking, let me finish. It reminds me a little bit of 1975. Bill will remember this, playing UCLA early in the season and then coming back and losing that Rose Bowl. They just sort of have a history in my memory bank of beating a team and then losing to that team. Now, maybe it switches this time and Oregon they lost Oregon, they beat Oregon. We'll see.
This feels, and again, it's one game. I don't want to make too much of the Tennessee game because, you have to
got to repeat it, Bill, right?
You got to do it again. But that game reminded me of how the team looked in 14 when it was like, the start of that game was Wisconsin-ish, 59-0-ish.
You let us know that too.
Yeah, well, it didn't stay that way in the second quarter. Then you thought, oh, geez, but
I think the same spirit. I don't think it needed to be 59-0.
No, you didn't need it to be. They had to beat them by 59-0 to get in the playoff. So that was a difference. But they looked like a team. This was the first time that they looked like a national championship team. They beat.
Yeah, they don't have Zeke. They have two guys that are pretty good.
What's that? They don't have what?
They don't have Zeke, but they have two guys that together are pretty decent.
Remember, Zeke wasn't Zeke until that playoff.
Well,
he
right,
wasn't,
but he was.
That's what I'm saying. But against Alabama, remember, he was inspired because the talk before the game was there are two great running backs in this game, and they're both in Alabama. T.J. Yeldon, and then Derrick Henry was just a freshman, I think, and they were great. And Alabama might have won if they'd ridden those guys, but that's old history. But they looked on Saturday like a team that can win it all.
Yep.
Well, they have the playmakers. Nobody can match the three receivers they have with Carnell Tate, Jeremiah Smith, and Emeka Egbuka.
Right.
And to me, that was the interesting thing about Jeremiah. He's been so steady this year in terms of typically one touchdown a game. This was the first time I felt like where he was. They really leaned on him to make the spectacular plays. He would typically have one or two highlight plays a game this year, but they really fed him the ball, and that might be the formula going forward a little bit.
And also, they made a deliberate attempt to throw to their running backs, especially Henderson, Trayvon, who's a very good receiver.
Mm-hmm.
And that touchdown run at the end, the second touchdown run, both of them are really impressive. But the second one, it looked like there was nothing. He ran into a defensive player, maybe his own blocker, and then he waited and found a seam.
I think he deserves more credit than he's probably gotten this year, Trayvon, for just sort of rewriting the end to his Ohio State career a little bit. And he gets more to write as well, but he had a spectacular freshman year, rushes for 1,000 yards, gets labeled brittle throughout, I think, just the last couple of years, and then has really played well this year behind a bad offensive line, has been really healthy. The fact you have somebody to share the load with has helped, but he's, I think, raised his NFL draft stock a lot in this last year and been somebody they might be able to ride a little more in the playoff, and it may not be the Zeke Elliott 20 times a game carry guy, but he might be able to get 10, 12 carries and then 3 touches as a pass catcher. So, he's somebody you can do different stuff with, and he's had a really nice, I think, senior year.
He's averaging 7 yards a carry. 7 yards a carry. That's,
that would be most, if that holds, that would be, I believe, the most in school history as an average for as many carries as he had. J.K. Dobbins was like 6 point something, and Zeke was up there too. But seven is pretty strong. I'll close my end here by just saying, again, we haven't talked about Will Howard. The 90%, 10%, I've always been talking about 90. He needs to be 90% good, and that 10% can't be terrible. And that he looked really good against Tennessee. Forced one in there, which shouldn't have. My point with that, I caught a lot of heat on that. Why are you focusing on that? Well, I'm focusing on that because we nitpick. When a team's this good, that's what you do. But secondly, when you've got the receivers you do and they're going to be open, you don't need to force it in like that.
It was first down. First down, and that was they could have gone up 28. They could have got a field goal. They could have scored, and that game's over. Instead, it's 21-10 soon after. So that was kind of the point. But regardless, forget that. He looked really good, and again, he had time. And when you give him time, he will beat you because of the receivers. And you also can run.
And he had those two passes to Smith were they were dimes. They were really good.
Yeah, he was 4 or 5 on passes of 20 yards or more down the field, which is big for him. As much as we've talked about the deep ball and his ability to be precise with the placement downfield. I was with you, Rob, for a lot of this year, and that was an area where I don't think it's his strong suit. I think the other side of that coin is he doesn't need to throw perfect deep balls. because you have such talented guys with Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Buka. The throw to Emeka was, I don't think, as pretty as the ones to Jeremiah, but you have the receivers to make those plays. So it's worth trying to push the ball downfield, I think, because of these guys. You have some room for error on some of these deeper throws. And I'm curious if they start to open things up more in that way down the stretch, because they have the guys who can catch it.
One thing he doesn't do is he doesn't overthrow guys. I'd like to see him overthrow some guys occasionally on the deep ball. He usually underthrows them, and that takes away that ability to make the incredible play.
We will have more to say as we preview the Oregon matchup, but that puts a wrap on our breakdown of Ohio State's 42-17 trouncing of Tennessee to move on to the quarterfinals. That was Rob Oller. I'm Joey Kaufman. Bill Rabinowitz. Thanks for joining us on the Buckeye Extra Football Podcast. Stay tuned to dispatch.com for more coverage as we get closer to January 1st in the Rose Bowl. Traditional Big Ten, Pac-10 Rose Bowl in Pasadena. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Be sure and subscribe to the Buckeye Extra Podcast in the iTunes Store, the Google Play Store, or on Stitcher.